Hello and welcome to the Talking Transport podcast. I'm Sasha Langeveld. I lead on personal security, digital exclusion and accessibility, and I'm the campaign and advocacy officer at London TravelWatch. And today I'll be your host. So if you're joining today for the first time, London TravelWatch is the independent transport watchdog for all of London's transport. We cover things from walking, wheeling, cycling, the tube, the bus and the train, amongst others in the city. And we work towards making sure that transport is accessible, affordable, inclusive, and safe for all those who use it. So before we talk about personal security, we're going to be welcoming Siwan Hayward, who is the Director of Security, Policing, and Enforcement at Transport for London. So are you able to tell me a bit more about yourself, about your role, and about your experience?
Thank you. And it's a great opportunity for me to be here and share a bit about the work that we do at TfL with a whole range of partners to meet our aim, which is that every journey that's made in London is safe and feels safe. So I lead a directorate called Security, Police and Enforcement, and that's a directorate that both sort of sets our overall strategy as an organisation about how do we protect everyone who travels in London, everyone who works for us, but also protect our assets and infrastructure from all forms of hostility. So that's from everyday crime and antisocial behaviour, which we see as workplace violence and aggression, or fare evasion, or pickpocketing on our network, all the way through to thinking about the threats that we face on a national and international level. Because obviously TfL is a provider of critical national infrastructure. We are critical to security of the UK economy. So we think right through to kind of, threats that come from terrorism and organised criminality. So I'm responsible for that. And I also then deploy operational colleagues out across the network who are part of our efforts in making sure that every journey feels safe, everyone feels welcome on our network, and that we keep crime to as low a level as we possibly can.
It's a big role. No, I'm glad that we're going to have a really good conversation about personal security today. We've got a few questions that we're going to be asking. But I guess the first one is, so together, last year we hosted our personal security summit. And the key kind of themes that came out of that was, collaboration, intersectionality, the barriers to reporting, and more or less inclusive campaigns. So I guess from your perspective, what made the event, really important, and what did you learn from it?
And you were right, it was a really welcome opportunity. And I think ever since London TravelWatch produced your report into personal security back in, I want to say 2021, 2022, that was an incredibly impactful report on us as an organisation, on the Mayor's office and a whole range of stakeholders, all of whom are working in providing safe and reliable transport across the capital. So it was a really fantastic opportunity to actually bring everybody together. In understanding what we need to do and do better and do differently to make journeys feel safer, we have a vast network of stakeholders that we engage with, and we really value listening to our stakeholders as they give and amplify the voices of people who are feeling excluded from our services, who have difficult experience in our services, and give us a real rich insight. But actually the summit was the first time that we'd got all those stakeholders who are concerned about hate crime on our network, who are concerned about violence against women and girls, who are concerned about different aspects of different journeys, got all those stakeholders together, not just to engage with us on some very sort of specific tactical initiatives, but really to take that step back and really think strategically about what we have achieved together and where we need to be prioritising for the future. So it felt like a fantastic opportunity to actually have a proper, really rich strategic discussion, look at the issues that are of common interest across a number of different groups, a number of different perspectives, and where there is real uniqueness in the voices that we're hearing. And you're right, what came through really loud and clear in that summit was the value of bringing those stakeholders together, the real need to think about intersectionality. And I'm acutely conscious that we've often tackled issues on a kind of crime basis. We think about particular aspects of hate crime, we think about violence against women and girls, but actually the real need to think about intersectionality in the approaches that we're taking, the real value in listening to the voice of our stakeholders, the need to rethink some of our work on active bystanders, and the need to rethink some of our work on reporting. So it's very influential, and it's a summit that's really had a huge sort of impact in shaping the the work that we have underway and that we've done since the summit, but also some of our future planning.
I mean, I definitely agree. I think it was a really good summit, but I might be a little bit biased. And are you able to tell us more about the priorities that came from the summit, but also what you've done since the summit? So I know you kind of mentioned that, a lot of work has been going on. Are you able to mention, for example, one priority that you're quite proud of doing since the summit?
We've looked again at refreshing our campaign materials and how we speak to London and how we speak to all our customers and people using our transport network, particularly public transport network, about these issues. So it came through very clearly from the summit and then from the further engagement that we've had, that having this very sort of segmented approach, which talked about types of violence against women and girls in one voice and then talked about hate crime in a different way, actually made things. It was kind of noisy and confusing and was starting to lose impact. We are relaunching our campaign materials that we'll be putting out on the network, which shows the stance that we're taking as TfL with our partners in the Metropolitan Police and the British Transport Police, but also with other rail operators and transport partners in the capital. And the stance that we're taking on the kind of standards and behaviours that we expect on our network and how we want our network to feel and how we want all our customers to feel. So the campaign's got two elements to it. It's got a really strong message to those individuals who may be considering committing offences on our network, whether they're offences of harassment, whether they're offences of hate, whether they're offences like fare evasion. And it really clearly states that offending on our network, you will get caught and you will be convicted. So it's a really strong and bold message which talks about the consequences of offending on our network as part of driving out and deterring those types of behaviour. And then the second element, which is the element that I'm most proud of, and I have to say London TravelWatch has been hugely influential on shaping the creative approach in this element. And that's the element where we are amplifying the role that can be played by active bystanders. And I know, London TravelWatch has been such a strong voice on this, but what we've done is that historically in our campaigns, we put out lots and lots of different tips about what you could do in different circumstances and what was different types of crime. But actually, we've totally simplified that. We put together a very simple call to action and to encourage all Londoners to look up, to be aware of what's happening around them, and to be active in supporting individuals who may be victimised on our network with a really simple call to action, which is act like a friend.
Sometimes, transport can feel a little isolating especially when, something happens and no one is there to support you. So very important messaging. And I think even looking at the past campaigns that TfL have done on personal security or bystander awareness, I would say that you're a good example in the industry. And a lot of, for example, transport operators come to us and ask, how could we do more of what, for example, yourselves are doing on bystander awareness? So congratulations on the campaign. To definitely, would recommend people to, check in on that campaign and see, see it for yourself. So as we mentioned, you've done a lot of campaigns and sometimes there can be multiple messaging. So I know you said, for example, you've made the campaign very simpler this time with acting like a friend. Are there any plans to collaborate with, for example, others in the industry on bystander awareness for them to also push out the kind of similar messaging?
It's a really well-made point, and I would just again like to emphasise, so the research and feedback that we got from London TravelWatch, which is the vast majority of Londoners, when they're travelling around the capital using public transport, that if they see something happen, they want to act, but they don't know what to do. So that whole piece about putting out a really simple message about acting like a friend and then taking the real life examples from Londoners who have stepped in, made the person being victimised feel seen and feel heard. That aspect of making it really simple to act like a friend is a message that we've really taken from London TravelWatch's own insight and research. We are really hopeful that through the rail delivery group and through our partners across a transport industry, that they too can take the materials that we have. We have a huge number of conversations with colleagues at DFT, rail delivery group, in the UK bus forums and networks. So we are sharing the material really widely. We really want everyone to get behind this message and hopefully take it nationally as well.
Good. I'm glad to see that, because in our report in 2022 as well, one of the key recommendations that we had was for the industry to come together and create, for example, a active bystander playbook. So yeah, I think it's definitely really important that we're all on the same page about what we're communicating to passengers, especially when passengers switch from different modes. The campaign should, be long lasting and I guess travel with them wherever they go. I know recently there was a new task force put together. Are you able to give me a bit more information about the task force? Like, for example, who's involved, and will we be able to see like an action plan of like what will be achieved?
Yeah, so in fact, it's really building on the success of the summit. The Mayor made a very public commitment as part of his manifesto that he wanted to see established a transport task force which specifically looked at hate crime and violence against women and girls. So that meant that with a bit of co-creation, I know you were quite influential over the kind of set of this, it meant that we could then create an opportunity as a task force to bring together a diverse cross-section of voices from real different stakeholders to look at the progress that we've made, the success we've had so far, and what are the really significant and outstanding issues for transport, like Transport for London, wider operators, the rail delivery group are part of it, the British Transport Police, the Met are part of it, to really listen to those wide range of voices and think about where do we want to be in 5 years' time. So let's start thinking much more strategically and collaboratively about our common aims and goals for the next 5 years. So the task force is hosted by the Mayor's office and chaired by the Deputy Mayor for Transport, Seb Dance. So that means that I'm going to be held to account on the progress that it's making, because I know the Mayor is watching very, very carefully on what we do. So it's got some really serious backing to it. And it is a real opportunity. So we're going to pursue certain themes, but we also want to leave the agenda very open for the agenda to be driven by the participants. So we've got, voluntary organisations, stakeholder organisations, a range of different expertise around the table, from ending violence against women and girls, from London TravelWatch, from refugee and migrant forums, from hate crime forums, from a whole range of different organisations who actually do provide sort of third-party reporting, as well as London-based community organisations. And what we're going to do, so there's going to be 5 meetings over the next year. We're going to look at themes which are really pertinent. So the theme of reporting, which comes up, the theme of trust and confidence in policing, which is a really significant one that we really want to get into kind of a really in-depth discussion with our stakeholders. We've looked at some aspects of communications and campaigns of behaviour change. We want to look again at frontline staff and training, and we'll explore those themes. But with what we want the task force to do is really help us crystallise the clear recommendations about where we need to be taking action and focusing our priorities for the next 5 years ahead. It comes at a great time because TfL is about to is in the midst of business planning. So we really want to set our investment priorities for the next 5 years. And I want those investment priorities that we make in improving personal security across our network to be very clearly informed by the lived experience of different stakeholders and the expertise who really campaign on this issue. So it's very good timing. It will help with our investment priorities, and will help make sure that what we do and deliver is really informed by great quality evidence, but also the voices of people whose lives we're trying to improve.
Yeah, no, very important things to also consider. And I know you mentioned, for example, intersectionality and lived experience. And I think having that understanding is very important, especially as you mentioned before about how, we have campaigns on hate crime as well as sexual harassment, but also, people's identities cross, for example. So you can't really decompartmentalize a person's identity. So it's really important to also look at how they play a part in kind of one instant as well. Now, going back to kind of reporting, and I know we've spoken, a lot about this being a priority in the industry. We've seen that it's been, highlighted in a lot of, for example, either reports, but also at the summit itself of like, what does this perfect pathway look like for example, passengers to get the support that they need, but also report and then action following that, and then also the feedback and closing this loop. So has TfL considered, or has TfL kind of looked to address the key issues around reporting? So for example, some people may not know the right process to go through in terms of reporting. What are they signposted to? But also you mentioned the little confidence or trust that passengers have either in reporting to the police, or in general the reporting process as a whole. So has TFL like taken this into consideration when looking at, for example, what they need to do on reporting to move forward?
So you're absolutely right to highlight this, and this is an area that we continue to grapple with, and are really looking forward to the opportunity the Taskforce is going to give us to really inform our thinking on reporting. So if I break this down into sort of what hopefully makes sense. So for hate crime and violence against women and girls, so for incidents that occur on a network, we know that there are a range of factors which prevent people reporting and prevent action being taken, and therefore means that offenders get away with their behaviour. Now, I am fundamentally my commitment to community safety and security is one where I want to see offenders called to account for their behaviour, and I want to see a future where no one comes onto our network to offend because they know they're going to get caught and they know they're going to be held to account. So reporting is really, really significant. You need to tell someone about this because we do want to identify the offenders and hold them to account for their behaviour. So the information that people provide is vitally, vitally important to build that picture on who's offending. And we have a network where we have some really unique opportunities to identify offender behaviour and for action to be taken. So we do have a network which it's got fantastic levels of coverage of CCTV, has got information and insight about people's movement around the network, and we have dedicated policing both on our bus network because the additional funding we put into the Met Police, but also we have dedicated policing for the rail network for the British Transport Police. So we have police partners whose core responsibility is to work with us to identify those offenders and make the network a hostile environment. But information and intelligence is vital to that. So there is something which is really important about reporting. But we also know that there is a huge amount of stigma associated with the types of offences and the types of crimes that we're talking about. We know that reporting is really difficult. It's not, it's still not very straightforward about who to report to and why. We know there's still a perception that incidents are not taken seriously by the police or by others, and a lot of people just, because there's such a normalisation of harassment and hate, and people are, face discrimination in so many different aspects of their life. You do really see it kind of, that when people experience hate on our network, it gets internalised, they just want to forget about it, they want to move on with their life, and they want to leave it behind on the transport network, and all of those act as kind of barriers to reporting. So the fundamental for us is we just got to try and make it as simple and easy as possible, and that make it easy so people report without any sense of obligation on them in terms of the level by which they're followed up, in terms of the level by which people feel that they have to then be witness, be interviewed by the police and be a witness and go to court and go through the really, really challenging criminal justice system. And we know there's still major issues in the criminal justice system in terms of the people who are victimised end up feeling like the kind of, end up feeling the kind of victim of the criminal justice system itself. So our fundamental is to make it really simple. So the first thing that we did, which we started 10 years ago, which has become so now mainstream for us, is that we train our staff. That's all 24,000 bus drivers. That's all our frontline staff across our railways, to be empathetic, to listen, to believe, and then for them to take responsibility for reporting. So take that burden away from the person who's being victimised, and for our staff to take responsibility for reporting, take down the details, and for them to report. Obviously, there's a lot of reporting that can be done through third-party agencies. We really welcome that. But what all this also needs is some changes in the criminal justice system and the willingness that there is for victimless reporting. So we can build up really good evidence about the perpetrators of offences on our network because we have cameras, because we have CCTV coverage, because we have great witness reporting, and we'd really like the kind of courage in the criminal justice system for those to actually be followed through. So we don't need to put victims through that process, but we can hold offenders to account for their behaviour. But staff training is really fundamental to this. Active bystanders is really fundamental to this. Make it as simple as possible is really fundamental to this.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And like you mentioned, most of the time when something does happen, for example, on the transport network, staff are one of the first, people amongst obviously the active bystanders that are there to support someone. So I wonder, is there a difference between the training that is given to staff on, for example, how to support someone that's experienced, for example, sexual harassment and hate crime, sexual harassment and assault, or hate crime, for example? Is there like a difference in the training that is given to staff, or is it one training for example, everything?
It is one training because the messaging for our staff is we try to keep it simple, which is always be empathetic, so be supportive, and always believe the person, and then report. So it's a real kind of support and report messaging.
Yeah, no, perfect. No, I think that definitely also comes through from, for example, the summit that we had of like supporting people and then encouraging them to report. And I know we spoke about, for example, third-party organizations and how they potentially can play a part in either bridging the gap between people who feel like they can't get support or report straight to the police. So I wonder, just, I guess, in terms of the overall pathway that we're looking at, for example, reporting, do staff know where to signpost, for example, passengers to if they don't, for example, want to go straight away to to the police? So is there any kind of like third-party support that staff know to suggest to passengers?
Yes, but we could probably do more work in that area. I mean, we will obviously, because for our staff, we also need to make this simple for them. And they do, bus drivers are driving a bus. They need, they are. So what we encourage for all our staff is that they then pass that report and information over to our control centres, then to people who are better equipped. But there is probably more that we can do in terms of other sources of support that could be available to victims. So we have. Hopefully you have seen that we've tried to roll out signage across the whole network, so in every carriage, in every bus, across our network, on every platform. It now talks about all the kind of different avenues that you can report through, where you can get help. But there is definitely more work to do, and it's something we want the Taskforce help with in terms of where else we should be signposting people for support, and what else can we give as support, as well as the pathways of reporting through to the police.
Yeah, no, that definitely does make sense. And I know, for example, our report that we did most recently, which is actually on the table, is more example like things like Catch, Zatoria, and like other, for example, third parties. I know we've spoken about, for example, a lot of on reporting, and a lot of how important it is to make a report and the staff involvement in supporting passengers in doing that. But the question that I had, does TfL, as well as the British Transport Police and the Met Police, have the capacity for the influx of reporting that will come through? Because I'm assuming we'd get, for example, more reports, which is a good thing. But is there a potential gap where, for example, the reports that are coming in might not be able to be caught because of the capacity? And then does that bridge kind of make the gap widen in the mistrust in either the reporting process or, for example, reporting it straight to the policing authorities? So is there capacity, I guess, for the overall influx that might come from the campaigns that you're doing?
I mean, it's a problem we welcome. Yeah. So if there is, a huge, and we hope there is a huge surge in report and demand, then it is our responsibility to respond to that. We are very much about, support. It's victims first. We should be supporting and safeguarding the people who've been victimised first. So we do discuss this a lot with our colleagues in British Transport Police and the Met. There's lots of interesting discussions about how we can better use AI and bots to be able to kind of sift reporting and can pick up patterns and be able to actually understand correlations, and therefore how we can actually speed up some of the investigation process so that we continue to have that capacity and continue to be really victim-centred. So it is, that's it's a potential problem that you're talking about is one that we really welcome, because it means that we can get on with the task that we really want to do, which is actually taking action against offenders as well, and really make the network a hostile place.
Okay, no, that's really good to know. And I know we've got a lot of data, for example, on personal security. And I know, for example, from the Taskforce, you were also looking at doing, for example, the next step that is needed to move forward with personal security and the campaign. So all the things that you mentioned are really important, and I'm sure passengers will be really, interested in hearing a bit more. So in terms of, for example, TfL, what can we see, TfL doing in the next, for example, say 6 months of this year? What is the main focus for the rest of the year for TfL on personal security?
So specifically on personal security, I mean, fundamentally, our responsibility as TfL is to run a safe and reliable public transport network and to ensure that people make active travel choices so that we can all see a future for the capital, which is safe and green and inclusive and sustainable. So we want people to feel confident to walk and cycle. We want people to feel confident to travel by public transport. And it's our responsibility to make sure that transport network is reliable, and it's safe and it feels welcoming. So within that, we've got a number of priorities that we're pursuing at the moment. So we are really looking forward to the collaborative work through the Taskforce with our range of stakeholders to really hone the kind of priorities and interventions that we have for the year ahead and the 5 years ahead. We're doing that against a backdrop where we are acutely conscious that particularly for religious and race hate crime on our network, but also for all forms of hate crime, so disability hate crime, LGBTQ plus hate crime. What we see on our network is that hate crime correlates very strongly with events in national and international stage and what's going on in the wider media. And there's been a lot of hate and hostility dominating some of the national conversations and international conversations as well. I have that concern about the fact that we are embarking on a real refresh and reset and re-energising this work at a time where the wider environment that London operates in and that transport in London operates in is potentially, there's growing divisions and growing stigma. So that kind of responsibility on us is a really significant one, and it's one that becomes more and more important as London, as a diverse city that welcomes people from all over the world, needs to really feel like a place that's welcoming, and that our public transport feels welcome, because it's so vital for people to be able to access all the opportunities that London has to offer. Alongside that, with the work with the Taskforce, we're putting quite a lot of emphasis in terms of thinking about the kind of how do you make the transport network feel safe? So there's lots about obviously how it's actually, it's clean, it's well lit, that we clear up all the graffiti and vandalism and make it feel like a safe place. But actually really fundamental to that is what we call capable guardianship. So it's ensuring that alongside our frontline teams who are there to provide customer service, we have a very visible presence of TfL's own enforcement staff, which is transport support enforcement officers and other enforcement teams, who are really there to be proactive, to make all customers feel welcome, and to be very attuned to someone who might be looking a bit vulnerable, looking a bit lost, and in need of support. So that capable guardianship, so it really would make the network feel safe through both the people and then how we design the network and the infrastructure. We're doing quite a lot of thinking at the moment as well about technology opportunities. How can we better upgrade and develop our camera system? How can we better use the data and the information that we have from people who travel around our network to really make our network feel safe for all our users, and also ensure that people who might be committing offence on our network, that they are caught really quickly and that they are held to account. So lots going on in the technology arena as well, and then those fundamental bedrocks of good training, good communications, good policing continue.
Yeah, I mean, someone once told me that kind of transport, particularly the tube, for example, is almost like a microcosm of everything else in our society. So potentially, like, people's perception of safety, depending on what's happening in the world, feels very real and very, I guess, almost immediate. So it is really important to, carry on things like bystander awareness, like you've mentioned.
Yeah,
be a friend, I think is the key point.
I think that piece that actually the people who come, all of us who live in London and love this city, and it is, it's crowded and it's busy, and but actually, people want to do the right thing, and I think your research was really compelling in that regard, that actually people in London do want to look out for each other and do help. And it's sort of, people say to me, it's like, London's so unfriendly. Like, no, it's not.
I think that is also a lie. I think we owe a lot more to each other than staying silent when it matters the most. And I guess the final thing really, to highlight everything that we kind of spoken about is coming back to the point on intersectionality. it's so important to have that lived experience, but also understand that other people within, for example, different demographics and identities also have very different approaches and perceptions to safety. So it's also to make sure that there's, not one solution fits all, and it's really listening to what passengers need and then, going forth in terms of training the staff, and giving people, I guess, the tools to support each other during this time. So yeah, I think everything that you're doing is going to be very important in the next couple of years. And yeah, I think we're going to look forward to obviously keeping in touch with the things that you're doing. And also we're doing quite a lot of things on reporting at the moment. And I'm sure we'll be doing more on, for example, looking into hate crime and sexual harassment, as it's will forever be a key issue on the transport network.
Yeah, and the opportunity of the task force does mean that we can have those much longer, deeper conversations and really understand, as you describe it, both where perspectives and the expectations overlap, but where they are distinct as well. So we can be much more nuanced. And there are opportunities, obviously through technology and through social media and everything, that we can be a bit more tailored and a bit more nuanced, but also really seek out that kind of unity and commonality that we're all seeking. So it's So I'm really looking forward to Task Force giving us that insight. That we definitely would benefit from, so that we are going forward with that really strong evidence base for the work that we do. Money's really tight at TfL, as it is across the public sector, as it is more broadly. So we want to make sure that the choices that we're making about where we invest and where we put our resources are really well informed by the people who have the greatest insight, are most impacted, and have real lived experience to shape and determine what we do.
And I think that's very important. I think it's always wise to do decisions that are going to be the most beneficial to passengers, as well as I guess reaching with the budget that you have and making it also work. I guess what we also are keen to see is things not only be online, for example, looking at how people are digitally excluded, and how, for example, they can also feed that report in when you do use technology, or even, for example, how other passengers are also not wrongly accused when looking at, for example, the use of technology in surveillance, and how that is also perceived on the network. But there's a lot of
interesting times ahead,
in personal security, and I'm sure we'll work very closely together in the next couple of years. Well, thank you so much. As always, it's been a pleasure, and I'm sure a lot of people have probably found it very insightful. So thank you to all of those at home who have taken the time to also tune in today. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. And you can hear more about London TravelWatch on our website. And if you want to join our newsletter, there's more information on our website too. So thank you again.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I hope everyone gets home safe. And we'll see you very soon.